Stephanie Anthony. It's on these books, Strange Houses and Strange Pictures by Uketsu. Publisher is Pushkin Vertigo. The price is around $6.99 or $7.99 and around 240 on 208 pages. So the narration basically draws readers into mysteries of shifting clues and domestic settings. It's turning everyday life into unsettling puzzles of dread. So, when bestsellers blending mystery and horror by an anonymous Japanese author are published in English, the fans of creepy tales are in for a treat. The fact that the author appears masked on videos and speaks in a distorted voice only adds to the weird quotient and his cult status. So, with stories steeped in intrigue and an adequate amount of the dark and grim, author Uketsu is his own ambience. So there are his two works, which is Strange Pictures and Strange Houses, that's translated into English by Jim Rion, which unfolds like traditional puzzles. And these are layering the mysteries into a parfait of missing people, etchings that need a second look, mysteries, murders, and grisly rituals. So, in some way, he reminds the Indian reader of Satyajit Ray's fiction. Uketsu cuts up his story into chapters that unfold like short stories with chills reminiscent of Ray's straightforward style. So while the latter builds an atmosphere of unearthliness with each tale, the former gives us one complete arc with seemingly disparate dispatches coming to the main story with a series of subplots. So an anecdotal air is maintained throughout, with old friends talking and eating and calling each other up again with a new thought or because they happen to remember something. So there is a brevity to the writing as if only essentials are being shared, which is a tricky premise in fiction that must mystify and keep us sleepless. The setting and scenery are pared down to plot points. Dialogues are strictly conversational with a marked lack of flourishes, and the plot thins down to the understandable instead of thickening into wordy exposition. So no twist is seen coming, and yet they are hiding in plain sight. So is this person a serial killer? Does that person believe in iffy altar offerings? Maybe not, but the public face that everyone puts on is roughly the same. So it is difficult to be sure. The nurturing of doubt, the sustaining of suspense, all of that is an art, especially when this genre must engage with red herrings and unreliable narrators. It's not the clue that we are staring at, it's a clue that is staring at us. So while one book goes into art, the other gives us architecture. Strange Pictures goes all squiggly on us with its drawings and drawings inside drawings. So even smudges have their say. Pictures are piled on each other till they speak thousand words. People draw and die, even sketching alibis. So Strange Houses, on the other hand, talks about pile driving, floor plans, trapdoors, and dead space. So boxed up unventilated spaces form the where when bodies missing their left hands start to dot the bushes. So the way the author builds the cases, whether they be about runaway little boys or about young girls who go missing from their families, he incorporates his readers into the espionage. So we are all detectives, as there's no single hero sleuth who gets to solve the case. So while words lead us into a maze where strangeness rears its head at sharp corners, the telling remains misleadingly prosaic. So I'll repeat that line once more. So while words lead us into a maze where strangeness rears its head At sharp corners, the telling remains misleadingly prosaic. So, psychological insights intersperse casual chat, drawing attention to missed details, sometimes even readerly oversight. So, for fans of mystery with a pinch of horror, Uketsu throws in delicious shivers. He is very much in control of the hair at the back of your neck. Memories of abuse surface now and then, entire families vanish overnight. All stories carry in their fist a dark baton. Unexpected characters reveal an unsettling past, and the macabre turn is assured. So, what seems like a viable property soon goes into grey reality. So, who seems like a doting mother is caught without makeup one day, and the woman in a picture is either standing or lying down, depending on which way up we view it. So it is this stealthy relook that loops the reader in. So the hook is to play co-detective. Lists and timetables appear at regular intervals, summing up events so far, mixing up the insignificant with the significant, which is just enough to make us turn the page. So pictures are repeated but with different instructions. That's the way we see. So take for instance Yuta in Strange Pictures. He is 6 and he's trying to remember what his father had told him. So or Yuzuki in Strange Houses, who soon admits she is not who she said she was. So backstories stumbled out just as closets give up their skeletons and facts back themselves into a corner, even though not everything ties up prettily or even clearly at the end. So perhaps we are surrounded by monsters wearing masks. So when everyone speaks politely in a book, all the time bowing and apologizing, the minute details of a different culture only add to the thrills. Suburban Tokyo harbors sinister secrets. Too many things bump in the night in these rooms, measured in tatami mats. And in Oketsu's world, everything we seem to know turns into strange puzzles. So, and there's another book review here for you, which is Shadows over Ayodhya. We can have a look at that too. Inspired by true events, the book is by Anuj Tiwari. It is a razor sharp political thriller about power, fear, and the deadly consequences of uncovering a secret buried beneath the holy ground. You can send your books to as a publisher say for review to the Sunday Standard, and you will get a review there in the paper. So speaking of history is another book by Namit Romila Thapar and Namit Arora, featuring wide-ranging conversations that brings India's past to sharp focus, exploring how in history is written, remembered, and fought over. And then you also have another book which is What Remains After a Fire by Khanzar Javed. It is provocative, wise, and tender, and the short story collection tells of women who are united by their search for love and acceptance in a world that is governed by men. So, what remains after a fire? Be sure to buy that. I think that would be a very interesting book. It's okay not to get along with everyone is by Dancing Snail. Publishers are HarperCollins. So this explores the necessity of maintaining a healthy distance in relationships and surrounding yourself with people you are most comfortable with. Shall we have a look at Tales of a Tribe also by Satya Saran? And also there's another one here, The Last Free Naga by Jim Bungram Yao Kosam. That's quite a name. So it is rare to come across a collection of short stories that presents a distinct identity of the Naga people in all its brutal honesty. The Last Free Naga by Jim Bungram Yao Kosam takes the readers into a different realm, one that mainland India doesn't seem to be familiar with. Captures the way of life of Thandkul
Incoming voice call from
Naga.
+918.
It captures the way of life of Nangkul Nagas and also their love of stories, of their love for nature. Born and raised in Manipur, we'll see that Kasum threads an autobiographical strain through his stories, animating the landscapes and also the tensions of the place that he calls home. Overlapping cultures, broken dreams, and omnipresent military, the grief of loss, all of these themes appear with a sense of rootedness. In the story, A Village Boy's Dream, you'll see that a young boy at the age of adolescence finds companionship in a dog, of all things, of all pets and creatures. So, when poverty forces the dog to be sold, he is heartbroken. I suppose he looks at the dog, as I do too, as another human equated creature, somebody that has equal value. So, yet, when the dog returns occasionally to his old home, the boy finds himself feeling a cautious joy, which in a way mirrors the drama and tension that the author portrays almost in every story. So, Good Samaritan on a rainy day centers on a young boy who comes home for vacation. He loves his life in the village and asks not to be, and he asks also not to be sent back to school. So, you will hate me now, but you will thank me later, his mother says. So, with this simple premise, Kasom captures the living conditions and everyday dreams of the Naga people. He writes Thankul Naga living in villages were industrious people. They treated laziness like a sin. It didn't matter if they succeeded in life. So, they worked hard and they tormented themselves enough. They felt fulfilled. Another story tells of a mother and son carrying produce up steep slopes, meeting a young Naga man who returned to the village for his father's funeral. His quiet hair, polished manner, all of that leaves a mark on the boy who is struck by the fact that the man helps carry the mother's burden. Impressed by his more refined and robust look, the boy changes his mind. Soon he would join the mass exodus of young Naga people for education and opportunities. The River That Bends Time is an interesting story that traces a father taking his city-bred son back to the village. So the boy's shifting understanding of nature, the father's quiet farewell, all of that, signaled by two car honks as they leave, makes the story especially moving. Across the collection, we see the struggles of a fiercely independent tribal community that has endured deprivation for decades. So, the ever present political spectre adds fear and forbidding to the stories. There are no flashy literary flourishes, only clear concentrated emotion. Hassom's simple language makes the book accessible, and the varied stories together form a vivid portrait of a life which is far from the turbulence of cities. Lastly, in this section here for you today, we're having a look at a book which is A Cup of Coffee for the Spiritual Self. It is an interesting book here review for you all, and the summary of it is here for you. Through her personal journey, the author shows us how ancient wisdom can still guide us amid distractions and digital noise. The writer is Namita Devi Dayal. So her book is Tangerine, How to Read the Upanishads Without Giving Up Coffee. Interesting title there. The review is by Saurabh Sharma. So Namita Devi Dayal, in her book Tangerine, How to Read the Upanishads Without Giving Up Coffee, wants people to slow down, observe, and appreciate the age old wisdoms that seem to have escaped them in their busy lives, now overwhelmed with the rise of AI. So, divided into six parts, Tangerine is Devi Dayal's personal account of navigating faith and belief in an increasingly masculine, intolerant, homogenized, and monopolized idea of Hinduism. However, she notes this context, doesn't but doesn't delve into it. Earlier in the book, she writes there is very little connection between Hinduism, which is philosophy, and Hindutva. But it's also true that religion is often leveraged to divide people. So, if the self claimed religious and spiritual leaders fool people by telling stories that inspire blind acceptance, then the dynamics certainly need more attention than Devi Dayal offers. But to critique her on that aspect would be to discredit the aim with which she wrote this book, to signal a possibility of self actualization in each of us. So, Devi Dayal begins the book with the famous rope and the snake parable. She asks, do you see what you actually see, or do you, with all your biases and aspirations, ascribe meaning to what you see? So she concludes the introduction by noting that what we see is therefore not the whole truth. However, that's where at the very beginning and very alert reader would be suspicious, for the whole enterprise of truth telling is complicated. So truth is subjective. Nevertheless, it is a seeking that one is drawn to, which is tied to knowing truth, whatever it may be, for the seeker. So it is this seeking Devi Dayal noticed in herself and then left a very comfortable, uncomfortable life with all her requisite masks and costumes, looking for answers to help explain a transition she was witnessing, noticing divorce rituals turn comedic and parenting demanding. So she sees a hypnotherapist first, goes to a retreat to detox mind and body, but this lingering thread of sadness would become an infection point for her, coupled with the realization that nothing in life is random. She finally arrives in Rishikesh. She first learns to be patient, then meets Neema Majumdar, who, along with her husband Surya, held an immersive retreat in the Swami Dayananda ashram by the river. So, to her credit, Devi Dayal admits that parts of what she experienced in that retreat were fanciful, alongside sharing her conviction that she wanted to suspend reason and break down the ideas and ideologies that had for so long governed her thoughts and emotions. When the seeking begins, a path emerges. Devi Dayal follows it, noticing changes in her mindset and her body as she finds herself transformed. In telling the story of her seeking, she recounts anecdotes from her early journalism days. They never appear jarring and meld into her story, providing context to Devi Dayal's personal and collective histories. What's sold as secrets, often in the kind of book that Tangerine is, nothing more than logical acceptance in the face of events. So Devi Dayal exhibits this acceptance throughout, be it meeting her husband with a philosophical kind of bent while working with Sony Mehta in the US, taking her child's advice to avoid Gyan and just write her story, or believing in the power of a musical note while learning music, or in realizing that what you think you are is really not that. The key takeaway from this book. So I hope that was interesting. We did a couple of book reviews there. What we could do next is a luxury a dramscape, which is award-winning blends and bold new single malls, which are now being viewed as long-term assets, and India is quietly joining the round. Are you interested in this, or should we do another one?